Good evening. Welcome to New Horizons. Welcome back to Simon Parkes with the alien agenda, what they don't want you to know. Simon grew up in a family with intimate links to MI5 and MI6 and was privy to quite startling information regarding our association with strange craft and possibly their inhabitants. Our association in this instance refers to certain government departments, probably the military. Simon's research indicates high-level secrecy around this subject. Maybe this is for our benefit. Let's find out. Please welcome Simon Parkes.
Thank you, Rob. Where's the white line there? Right, good evening everybody. I'm delighted to be invited back. For those of you who saw me the first time, I discussed the Illuminati, and tonight we're going to look at the alien side of it. Can I just have a show of hands who was present for my first talk? About 9 out of 12, or 75%. Thank you. So thank you very much for inviting me back. For those who don't know, I am an elected politician. And when you are elected because people presumably like what you say. Yeah. After 4 years or 5 years, you stand again and you're either re-elected or not. And it's actually better when you are re-elected because you are being judged. So although I was really grateful that I was invited here in October to speak, I've been invited back. That means the audience liked what they heard. So for me, to be invited back a second time is actually more important than being invited the first time. Okay, I'm elected local councillor. I was an elected Labour councillor in London and escaped from London in 1999, moved to Whitby and decided, having worn the t-shirt, I wasn't going to do it again. And local people came to me and said, certain issues, can you join back in? So I did, and I was re-elected. So I'm back as a local councillor. Being a driving instructor for a job for a number of years. When I was in London, I was an auxiliary lecturer at the Natural History Museum. Worked for local authorities for most of my life. So an interesting way of mixing perhaps with both community and with the establishment. The last visit, I generally talked about the Illuminati. I explained about my mother working for MI5, my grandfather working for what became MI6, and her job. We'll touch a little bit on that because it's very difficult to say this is where the Illuminati finishes and this is where the aliens start. When I was just having a chat with Chrissy tonight, when I arrived here October of last year, and Sam will find this funny, the YMCA building where probe holes was pointed out to me, and Chrissy said to me, that's the alien place. So I thought, right, we can't talk too much about aliens. So I'm not proposing to stand here tonight and regale you with one story after another of alien interaction. What I'd rather try and do is to give you some of that personal insight, because that's what makes it different. But to link it with how the Earth is changing, how the people should be changing, try and make it relevant in that way. And try and do it in a way that it perhaps links in with the other things that your own personal research, your own personal interests. Because tonight this is one piece of the jigsaw, and you guys have several pieces, and you are hopefully putting them together. I'm not one of these people that runs away, jumps in the car and flies off. I'm very happy to stand and talk to you. You know, it's about networking, it's about sharing experiences and ideas, and I'm more than happy to give you my email address. I try desperately to reply to every serious email I get. Sometimes I'm swamped, and if I don't get back to you, just resend it. It'll be that I've just missed it. Okay, that's enough of me and what we did last time. There are a number of views about UFOs. The first one is that all UFOs are human-made, came from the Nazi technology, and the whole idea of aliens is a PSYOP operation designed to throw people off the true scent where they are. There's another view which says some UFOs are human and some are made by aliens. View 3, all UFOs are alien. And view 4, there are no such thing as UFOs. That's actually the world that we live in. You either have a view on that, or maybe you don't have any view at all. Often I'd say, what actually will happen to make the majority believe? This is a very stable world. Now, you'll say, well, it's not stable because there are wars. Actually, that is part of stability. That's been built into the human psyche. So we live in a very, very stable and predictable world, and people who are not enlightened are quite happy with that world. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about aliens or fluoride in your water or medicines. They don't want to know. This is the world, they're happy with it. So it's a very, very difficult environment for anybody to try and wake anyone up. I'll give you an example of the taxi driver. I did an interview in London and had a taxi ride, and the driver said to me, oh, I hear you're going to the TV studios to talk about aliens. I said, yeah, that's right. So he said, well, when I was in my 20s, I was really interested. But you know what, when the government never said anything and nobody ever came out, I just lost interest. And that is the point, that people go through a phase in their life where they're open, their minds are open, and they'll challenge and they'll ask questions. But because officialdom isn't supplying any sort of answers, and they've got the rent to pay, the mortgage to pay, it just goes out. The only way that the majority of people will believe is when a gentleman in a suit goes on the major news and says, ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make. Aliens are real. We're really sorry we didn't tell you before, but you know what? We thought you would be scared and panic, but it's real. That's the only thing that will make people believe. If you sat a spaceship for 4 days above every major city in the world, at the end of those 4 days, people would just shake their heads and said, I must have had too much to drink. They are so conditioned, they wouldn't believe it. But they will believe somebody making an official announcement. Now, that's not going to happen easily, because the powers that be have no intention of making anything public. The only way they'll make it public is when they're dragged kicking and screaming to tell the truth. All right, let's make a list. Who can just shout out different sorts of aliens that you're aware of, either from the internet or personal experience? Greys? Good. One.
Pleiadians.
Sorry?
Pleiadians.
Pleiadians? Okay.
Nordics. The
Nordics?
Reptilians.
Reptilians? Human beings? Well, that's actually, we'll come back to that. Good point. You've done really well. But I noticed that most of the people in the front called out. Can somebody call out from the back? Name an alien race from the back. Thank you. 90% of them. Actually, Tony Blair was a member of the Illuminati, and is a member of the Illuminati, and is a Satanist. Right. What about human-bodied, about alien souls? This is your question. You asked me about humans, didn't you? What about humans, but have an alien soul. What's the terminology for that?
Hybrid.
Not bad. A hybrid actually is the body. We'll come on to that. I'm talking about a human body but an alien soul. What about 5, 6, 7 years ago it was quite popular.
Transhuman.
Do you remember walk-ins, star children? Okay, that's what we're talking about here. A human type body but with an alien soul.
Lord Carriage.
Ah, he's very interesting. All right, one question often asked is, what do aliens want? I'm often asked that question. And the problem is that the people who ask that assume there's one type of alien. If there was one type of alien, it would be so easy to answer that. Here's an analogy for you. Let's use a 3D world. You find some oil off some far-flung country. So you go to the Americans and you say, you've got the ship big enough to get us out there to test the oil. Who's good at drilling? Oh, the Brits are good at drilling. We'll get the Brits in to do the drilling. Who's good at optics? Oh, the Germans are good at optics. We'll get the Germans in to do us the cameras. And what you've got is a group, different group of people, all coming together to actually carry out one job. And to a certain extent, with the alien agenda, that's exactly what you've got. So you've got what we call the reptilians, the mantids, the greys, some Nordics, who are all signed up to a set agenda. Somebody said Palladians, they're not signed up, that's a different agenda. So to answer what the aliens want, specifically the question would be, what does this particular group want? But of course the people who ask that question don't really understand. How do they get here? Well, there are two ways that I'm aware of that you can get here. One is literally what we'd call extraterrestrial. We'll come on to that. That's so the tall whites. Somebody mentioned the tall whites here. Charles Hall, who spoke at Probe on 2 years running possibly, talked a lot about the tall whites. It takes the tall whites 20 years to get here. About 20 years, because they are using what I consider very, very primitive technology. And they are literally exactly the same as you. So they're not fourth dimensional. And it takes them 20 years to get here at about 2.5 to 3 times the speed of light. Others are a dimensional change, so fourth dimension. Some of the reptilians are fourth dimensional. So they will come here through a dimensional time space, and that won't take them more than just a few seconds. Think about it. If you were a living creature as you are, you really couldn't spend 50, 60, 70 years in a spaceship traveling from one place to another. So you have to either identify a system of speed or a system of time to get you to where you want. The other question they ask is, why don't they make themselves known? I'm always asked this by local BBC radio stations. And the answer is because they don't want to know. Because it would hamper what they're up to. If everybody was aware of them, nearly every American would arm himself or herself with a gun and hide under the stairs. Every defence force and the country would feel it was honour bound to do something, and it would just hamper the situation. Added to that, the elite, some of whom are working with some of these extraterrestrials or extra-dimensional entities, certainly don't want you to know, because if you know that, the next question is, what about the technology? And if aliens are real, then who in position of power knows about them? The answer is every major government of the world has a number of people who are fully briefed and fully know it. Recently, again, the ex-minister for Canada, who was a defence minister, he's come back on to be public. So he was a Minister of Defence in a very large country who was fully aware of it. You have leaders of the CIA who know nothing. You'll have people in middle rank, like a major, who will know everything, and yet their general may know nothing. So it's called need to know.
The Canadian officer, government minister, said there's 57, 58 races, is that?
Yeah, he said that he was aware of 50-something races. But Canada and America don't get on. America does not share a great deal of information with Canada. He was aware of what had passed across his desk. So his own intelligence had told him that there were 50-some races. But if you took America, which is the hub, the spider's web of intelligence, that figure would be considerably larger. Or indeed, the Russians. Why don't they tell us about them? Well, they do, but they do it on their deathbed, when they can't be got, or their families can't be got. They'll do it when they've resigned, or they'll do it like me, because I don't care. Extraterrestrial means literally a body, a biological body. So it's a biological body that has travelled here not very long, like the tall whites, biological, male and female, and have children. An extra-dimensional entity is an entity from the 4th, 5th, 6th, go upwards dimension that has travelled here in a craft that has opened a portal and has dimensionally come through. And you often find lots and lots of people who suffer from radiation sickness, burns. It's because when the craft is coming from one reality to another, there's a blast of energy, and if they're too near to the craft, that's when they'll describe they've got burns down their arms or their legs. And that's just shoddy, because whoever's piloting the craft hasn't done their work properly. An interdimensional entity is an entity that exists between the 3rd and the 4th. I prefer the word jinn, but if you go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're known as velon. And these are beings that live literally between the two dimensions. And the Satanists, the dark illuminati, the dark magic masters, are able to conjure these Denzians from the interdimensional space through to do their bidding. There's one gentleman here who knows his Bible very well. If you think back to the Old Testament, King Solomon had a jinn, and he called the jinn through with his iron ring, and the jinn helped him to build his palace. In the West, we don't seem to really take it seriously. We look at it on the same way as we would pixies and fairies. But in the East, it's very serious. Those who've read their Quran, not only does it talk about the jinn, it tells you how to get rid of them.
What was the other word you used?
Velon.
And what was that?
Velon. Velon. That appears in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we're talking about the same beings. They have afflicted humanity for thousands of years. Okay, abduction. Abduction is the taking of a person when that person has not given permission. The trouble is, on occasion, the person has given permission in the past and has completely forgotten about it. But in most cases, the person has not given permission. That is an abduction. A contact is when Alex Collier might be your classic contactee. This is when you are collected, sat down, given a nice cup of tea, and they'll tell you everything you want to know, and then they send you back. It's a nice, happy way. I'm not, being silly. That's a big difference. Abduction usually ends up with you being experimented on, being harmed, and it being very unpleasant. I prefer to call myself an experiencer, because I am neither abducted nor in contact. I have a very clear memory in 1971 of making what researchers call a soul agreement. To me, it was just the bargain. In 1971, I was offered a deal, and I said, yes, I'll have that. So, to me, it's not abduction, it's not contact, it's experience, because also an experience can be something that happens in your front room. And we'll talk about that. Two ways to take a person. One is literally their physical body. You walk them out, you float them up to go into a craft, and off you go. And the other way is an energetic take. Again, here in the West we don't really understand it, but in the East they do. Those who understand that you have a soul and your physical body is not really that important. You have an energetic overlay. That energetic overlay can be taken and your body doesn't die, providing it's not taken for too long. So you can either be taken energetically or it can be taken physically. Physical, energetic. Mind projection. Many people can't tell the difference. An alien arrives in your front room and you think, oh, I'm in the Bahamas. No, you're not. You're in the front room. The creature's gone into your mind and as projecting into it. Now it's easier, it's cheaper. It's less likely to be detected by the military. If a creature can come into your front room and give you an experience, and you think you've been to Mars, but you haven't left anywhere. It's time efficient, and it solves a lot of problems. The thing is that most people can't tell the difference between when they really are taken or when the creature is interacting. And the sad thing is that a lot of researchers don't value that. Oh, it didn't happen. You weren't physically taken. It's rubbish. The creature came into the room, entered your mind. That is important. Missing time.